everyone, it's Maria here from J'adore le papier. I am back to do a flip through of Gabrielle Book 2. I think it's been a couple months, but I just wanted to get this done before heading back up to Seattle. This is actually a gift from my friend Heather over at RubyandPearl.xo. It's officially a journal swap, but I think it's more of a gift, truly. It's just to thank her for all of her support, and because the last journal she just missed out on, and she loves her ladies from the 20s and 30s. Anyway, this flip through's for you. Okay, so this journal itself is called Coromandel, and this is actually the lady. It's for Gabrielle Chanel Book 2, and I found a book titled Coromandel, but actually the journal itself is going to be about her love of Asian screens. And so she actually collected them and kept up to, I believe, 32 in her collection, and 8 of them were at her apartment at Rue Cambon. Even though her original love was for the Oriental screen and all of its carvings, in 2016, I believe, they came out with a perfume called Coromandel, and this is just a advertisement picture of that. And I thought it would look good with this piece of art because I tried to make Heather a carved screen rendering using fabrics and different cutouts. She loves her birds, so I wanted to make sure and add that. And if you look really closely at the picture, there's quite a few birds, and Coromandels are typically very, very busy. But they have the swallows, they have the peacock, and a lot of flowers, and different forest scenes. I think Heather, because it's not perfect, actually if you put a photo right in front of it and then let it just be kind of like a mat, I think that'll look better than actually displaying it. But it does have a lot of dried flowers from Catherine at French Billet Doux. These are French flowers and some antique French lace here. And this actually came from Heather. But I just wanted to have that as your keepsake. This is the actual journal itself. I tried to make the front cover sort of a rendering of a very busy Coromandel screen. So you'll notice there's a lot of flowers. I did put some jewelry because Heather is a jewelry maker. And then I did add a swallow pin as well. So these pieces right here are jewelry. And then there's a lot of French buttons throughout. So there's actually 3 mother of pearl on the cover. This vintage check carved button from a brown paper parcel. Meabh at a brown paper parcel sent me those. Lots of ribbon and fabrics. And then this little rosette actually looks more like a ranuncula. Even though her flower was camellia, I thought that looked really good. I did extend the original spine of the book called Coromandel. That was the original width. I did extend it with some fabric that to me looked carved, sort of like a Coromandel screen. And then I added some buttons. This one actually came from Heather as a gift to me, but I thought it just looked too perfect. Sewing buttons, a little bit of a Chanel label there, and then some more of these special charms from Meabh. And then this here is actually a hat pin. And since Chanel started her career making hats, I thought it went perfectly with the journal. Let me take some measurements. Okay, let's start the flip through, and hopefully I can do this before the parents wake up. Alright, so as we open up the book, it actually starts out with a miniature inspiration board. Now notice that Chanel's colors are pretty much black, white, and khaki or tan. And this is a greeting card I'll be giving Heather, and I'll explain a little bit more about Chanel's colors and history. Oops, and I'll be using a lot of this paper and fabric throughout the journal itself. But basically those are her colors. So I tried to keep the journal itself in this color line. And we start with an inspiration board. You'll have pieces from her past that inspire her, including an old, what is this, rosary from Aubazine, the convent that she stayed at as a little girl. Fabrics from her color line, and pictures that inspired her. And so you'll notice how there are some buttons and some pins here. The charms themselves, this is actually a antique French St. Peter charm, also from Catherine at French Meabh. And then at the top, that's where those other charms, the sewing machine and the rosette are, and they're just pinned along there. You'll notice a lot of pins throughout the journal, so just be careful. I tried not to have the pointy side poking out too far. And this picture reminds me of her early days, where she was wearing a lot of the frocks, but I thought that was important. Front cover has her camellia, and this sketch from a French magazine. I just love the depiction of the flower and the perfume, and it's very black and white, so I thought that was perfect. The front cover is a antique book page that I got from Kay's Vintage Ephemera, and the title is actually called The Artist's Home. So Chanel is very much an artist. Most pages in here are either antique or vintage ledger or book pages, and then a few sketch pages that are blank for Heather, since she is a jewelry maker. I do add these timelines throughout just to reference. So there's 4 signatures plus 1 fabric signature in here, so a total of 5, about 120 pages. But I like to use these little timelines. So even though the last book I left off in the 20s, I wanted to revisit the 20s and her early career, just so that you would have reference to that. So of course she started out making hats, and then she opened her first boutiques in the French town of Deauville. And there's some ladies here in this vintage photograph, French photograph. So I'm trying to go really fast before the parents wake up, which I probably shouldn't, but it's my reality right now. There's that, and a little bit of this ribbon here with the Deauville. And then on the other side, it's actually a flip ledger paper, a vintage ledger paper with a secret picture of the lover of her life. And then this Vogue Archive photograph of a black lace Chanel dress is here because the other side here is a very antique French page depicting an opera. And so I just wanted to have a little bit of black ribbon, and the very first journal card I made her is actually of an opera dress using some lace and crepe. Oops, it's upside down. So if you take that out, it's just pinned to some suede. A little bit of the French threads that you'll be using and the pearls that you'll pair it with. Hopefully this is focusing okay. And then you could actually remove it from the card and journal on here, but the bodice is made of silk. The Queen's miniature French playing card there, and then there's a suede on the back, but you can actually journal on this. So there's your first design at the opera. Vintage French prayer cards and a little bit of blue, because blue is Heather's favorite color, and some handmade paper and vintage ledger on the back so she could actually write on there or sketch. Vintage photograph of 1920s ladies. Some more French, antique French embroidery magazine pages. Actually, this is from 1905, and this is a paper cutout, a French paper cutout that Catherine sent me. I'm not sure what they were originally used for, but I thought it complemented this Chanel No. 5 perfume, which came out in I don't even remember my own dates anymore. And then I added just a little bit of blue wispy fabric just to mimic her scarf. This is artwork by, by Sim, 1921. And I'll be sure to list his real name, and it's just backed by some vintage Parisian wallpaper that I got off of Etsy. On the back here is another timeline. So now we're into the 1920s. Chanel No. 5 is released. And then tweed, Chanel actually, Gabrielle discovers tweed in the 1920s as she's hanging out with a lot of gentlemen, friends, and callers. And this is one of the bulky pieces, but it's a photograph of Winston Churchill and the tweeds that she loved and adored. This, and some journaling cards from Mary Lou. Just wanted you to have a few of these printed out on vintage ledger so you could actually make notes throughout the journal. So I'll keep this in your little photograph envelope here with all the other reference material that I'll be giving you in this black envelope. And through some more journaling space here. The center of the first signature is a Chanel No. 5 ad from a French magazine. And some French Chanel ribbon that Catherine scouted out for me. She actually sent me quite a few ribbons from France. There. And then this page, if you're going to smell good, you've got to look good. And this is a piece of antique French lace from Catherine and some French ledger paper that I got from Kay's Vintage Ephemera in London in the UK. And then it's back with just some plain sketch paper for Heather to decorate. 1920s outfits and colors. These are some photographs from 1926 Chanel suits, and you see she's already using camellias. And this is a Chanel rendering. Right there, more ladies in Chanel suits, backed by the camellia embossed paper that I like to use throughout. Oops. Oh, and then this is magazine ad, also from that era, but I like the use of pleats here, and you'll notice the French or the Chanel suits are pleated also. Put that in the tuck, which is probably easier here. This is a tuck, pocket. A little bit more of my own Chanel ribbon that I got from Paris. Since she loves the ballet and using embroidery, I just wanted this to be a simple page. Some handmade paper there and some tulle. Page from the French magazine of embroidery. And then I backed it with some pink. This is actually a French postcard from Catherine. And because the flower goes so well with some vintage French wallpaper that Heather had sent me and some of my French silk ribbon, I thought it deserved a place in here. But look at the use of her pearls and the flower. Okay, flipped over, and we've got an authentic French letter of a lady writing to her girlfriend, circa 1922. Just tuck that behind this French ticket here from Catherine. And then I added this vintage postcard that I got from Penny and Rose, her collection. I'm not sure if Gabrielle loves strawberries, but I just love the embossed pink and how it just went really well with this, the ribbon and the next page. So if I flip over, it's a picture of a ballet theater, and then another one of these French paper cutouts. I did put a little bit of lace here just to strengthen the page. But on here, you've got a pink Latin phrases floating page that Heather could use, and then a piece of piano paper. And it says, "Of a lovely dance." And then Gabrielle did design ballet outfits through the 20s, starting in the 1920s. A lot more of that vintage British ledger paper for Heather, so she could write throughout. And then on this page, in 1922, the lipstick actually came out, her first one being a red lipstick. So I put one of my handmade cards from the early 2000s in here and added some ledger so that Heather could use that as a greeting card. But here's one of the ladies from the 1920s. It's a picture from a postcard from Catherine. I have so much of my French ephemera from Catherine, Meabh, and Kay. I'll take that out. Article about Chanel stores opening, French magazine page, vintage, and then to end the 20s is a photo of one of the Chanel dresses. That's actually this one here with the pink jacket. And then again, some more antique or vintage photos from France, from that era, in the French envelope with a little piece of handmade paper inside and some velvet to line for Heather. Just thought it coordinated well with that outfit. And then we begin the second chapter. So you'll notice the French linen in between, and there's the floating spine right there, and that's why the book's able to lay flat. 1930 magazine, Mode Pratique. And on this page, you'll notice some of the blank sketch papers that I left for Heather. This is a 1930 calendar, miniature calendar that I also got from Catherine. And then on the back is where you'll find the 1930s timeline. So 1931, Chanel goes to Hollywood. So she's invited by Sam Goldwyn to create a movie theater, or movies, outfits for the ladies. And then I wanted to point out that she also comes out with a high-end jewelry line called Bijoux de Diamants. And this is actually a little teeny tiny sketch of one of my favorite necklaces called Comet. So that's from 1932. And then in the late 30s, 1939, she actually closes her stores due to the war starting out. There's that timeline. And here's a photo from one of the movies she designed for, Tonight or Never. And this is Melvyn Douglas and Gloria Swanson, 1931. And then there's Chanel meeting with Ina Claire. And then a little bit of fabrics here. And then because she is starting to design, she started to design a high-end diamond line, I wanted to add that little diamond, well actually, what do you call these? Not a fake, but sort of a little gemstones that Heather shared with me on a little bit of French trim. On the back, more glamorous photos. I wanted Heather to have as many of these jewelry photos. This is a French or a Chanel design dress from the movie. Also, Tonight or Never with Gloria Swanson. But look at that necklace. And this is a floating page. It's actually a scarf that had the stars, also from 1931, I believe. French page, but it just looked like something that the movie stars would wear. And these are little ephemera pieces from Kay. They look like movie stars. And then a French magazine page from the 1930s. And then in here is a little picture of an ad. Here's the Comet necklace. So this is a press release from 1932. The photos from Robert Bresson. And this is the picture of the Comet. Can you imagine wearing that necklace? It was presented, the whole line was presented at one of her private apartments. Some more ledger paper, old photographs of women, some French ephemera. This story is actually about a woman having a baby and coming up with her next book about how to raise little boys to become gentlemen. So I thought that was perfect. A little bit of a red, pink French trim, vintage ledger. Photograph from the 30s of women in their dresses feeding chickens and heels. They have heels, dresses, and feeding their chickens. And then this is just a short ledger paper, a little sketch from 1938, supposedly of a Chanel design. I know she did design for the airlines as well. So that's in there. A little bit of vintage onion paper, see-through, and this is going to be the center of the second signature. And there are the swallows that Heather loves. So this is just a floating piece of wrapping paper that I know Heather liked, and a little bit of French ticket with French ribbon trim here. And this is the vintage postcard that I also got from Penny and Rose. But there are the swallows there. ledger paper, lots of blank space for Heather to write or decorate. 3 little miniature French playing cards, 7 ace ace or 711, which is actually my lucky number that I seem to see everywhere. And I think that might be a significant number for Heather as well. And then I have a little French vintage envelope that I got from Postal Love. And then this little swallow is actually from the UK. And luckily that arrived just in time. So it's an applique. More vintage French magazine page. And then this is an article from a vintage Marie Claire from 1938. So that is, and it has pants. And how to tie a scarf, just in case Heather wants to learn. Got there, a lot of blank sketch papers or pages for Heather. This is actually the paper that I've been using my timelines on. This actually wraps a lot of the vintage ribbon that I've been using, like this gray one here, and some of the brown ribbon, French cross grain, and silk ribbons that I got from Meabh in France. So I stamped up a few journaling cards for Heather in case she wants to use that throughout. I'll just tuck that in there. These are some British bus tickets and a little bit of sari silk. A floating piece of some jewelry from the 1930s, since Chanel was already into designing her own jewelry. And a little quote there. Be in love with your life. Some vintage ledger, French ledger from Kay. Just tucked in here for Heather. Third signature, 1940s, wartime. And this is actually the time that Chanel closes her stores and she flees to Switzerland. So I added some Swiss coins here from the 1940s and 50s, and then a little soldier, an actual photograph of a soldier. Skier, this is actually a miniature calendar, 1947. A little bit of French ribbon from Meabh, another coin, Swiss coin. And then here's your timeline. Oops. From 1940s, 1939. She closes her stores, 1945. And then a picture of a Swiss village, and this is a postcard from Lausanne. So that's the village she stayed at in Switzerland. It's unused. It's circa 1904, but it's still perfect for this journal. Hurry up. Photo of a woman. Snow mountains. Oh, Switzerland, land of watches. And here is an antique French document. I know Heather loves to scan these and include them in her kits. Bit of a signature there. Watch. And then on the next page, we actually have an advertisement for Omega watches. Of course, Switzerland is where they're made. And this postcard, vintage postcard of men overlooking Lausanne, her village. It says she loves her men. I thought that would be perfect to include with the men's watches. More French pages, onion paper, magazine. This is actually the center of the third. I just like the gowns here. And then during her downtime, I could only imagine she was designing her jewelry. Of course, this was her picture from 1920. But there's that bracelet that I love. And the reason I'm showing that is because I think while in Switzerland, even though she was away from her stores, she was designing jewelry. And this is a Vogue cover from 1942. A little bit of Japanese paper, and there's that gray silk ribbon from Meabh. Look how wide that is. I'll throw some of that in there for you, Heather, some more. A little sketch of some jewelry that I made for Heather to inspire her, and hopefully she can use these blank pages to keep sketching. And then, even though I showed you that comet photo of that necklace, this was also part of that line from 1932. And it's what I imagine to be an invitation to her show at that apartment, and it was all diamonds. So I couldn't replicate it using any of the glitter that Heather sent me, but I tried. So it was presented November 1932. Lots of glitter everywhere. A little camellia. And then there's a little bit about how she was approached by the Union of Diamond Merchants to actually publicize their jewels during the Great Depression. So those diamonds that she used all the entire line for, those were borrowed diamonds. Borrowed. Book pages, her color palette, and she begins to plan her return to Paris. So it's probably late 40s by now. This is a little bit of Parisian foil from Catherine, a little bit of a die cut from Catherine, vintage French, black velvet, white camellia embossed paper, and again, this is just some extra timeline paper that I had stitched up, and I'll just throw that in there for you, Heather. I'm going to talk faster because the parents are awake. Okay, technically the fourth signature is a fabric signature. That's where I made my little Chateau 31 Rue Cambon out of fabrics. Journaling space on the back. This I'll remove, Heather, because it's pretty thick with the wools. So I'll just put it in your pile, in your little book. This book, where I have all of your other research papers. Alright, so she's planning her return. She has fabrics here. And this is actually a vintage French invitation to some fashion houses. And a vintage French calling card. Husband and wife. Even though it's not an invitation to the Chanel show in 1954, I just like having that as a reference. And then this is a layout, hopefully it's showing on camera, of her designs that she wanted to come back with. A little bit of ribbon with French buttons. Picture, I've got to talk fast because the parents are eating. Blah, blah, here. Back there, wrap that up. Fabric, and then here's your fourth and final signature. A little bit of handmade paper right there. And then your 1950s timeline. So chapter 4, 1954, February 5th is her comeback fashion show at 31 Rue Cambon. A set of 5 jersey outfits. And then 1955, she created her famous handbag, which I think I have here. Oh, I haven't been showing you these. These are the journal card renderings, a little bit of pearl trim lace. Chanel actually wore this in the 30s. It was a long gown, long sleeve, crew neck, and then a little bit of that lace so you can see. But in the 50s, I made a little miniature Chanel suit out of tweed. You can see she's in the middle of sewing. A little bit of the ribbon trim she likes to use. Some of the mother of pearl buttons, and then it's a vintage postcard, and I added some French post stamps. And then, since she created that Chanel handbag in 1955, also made you a little mood board or planning board of the little French handbag. It's not an exact replica, and I tried to make it quilted, a little piece of leather, but that was too hard to do. A little wool for your jacket, a lace top, some mother of pearl, and a French thread. And then she loves to use chain as belts or as trim along her tweed jackets. So that's there. And actually she would line that in her jackets to weigh down the lapels. So that's one of your journaling cards I'll include. Timeline, 1956, trim tweed suits. Two-tone palms came out in 1957. Here's chapter 4. Book page from the actual Coromandel book, which actually was a book about Coromandel in New Zealand. So I'll leave a couple of those book pages for you, Heather. Sketch of her black and white tweed suit that she wore, I believe actually in the 50s or 60s. But I just wanted to sketch something for you, and as if she was planning it. More French book pages. Chanel sketches of her tweeds. Going super fast. Some of that blue thread to go in there. What else? More French embroidery pages. Oh, picture of the Coromandel. Look at that. Heather actually sent this washi tape, and I thought it went perfectly with the inlay here. But look how tall some of those are. And those were her two-tone pumps. This is a French ad of old shoes. I think these were 1940s before she came out. See how, not boring, but a little more standard issue versus her two-tone pumps. Theater pages, antique pages, a little antique French bill. She was paid millions for her Chanel No. 5. Actually, by 1947, she started receiving all the royalties from Chanel No. 5. 9 million during the war, and then every year after that was equivalent to 25 million just on Chanel No. 5. French ribbon, French ad, a magazine that Catherine sent me, and the men that was dominating the fashion industry. But Chanel came back with her suits, tweed suits. So, and there's her two-tone pumps, if you could see that. Doing all this one-handed is not good. There. Paper, vintage, a little die cut of a vintage sewing machine, embroidery page, kind of look like her camellia. More French book pages, and then some of this funeral paper and these miniature funeral envelopes representing her death in 1971. Just wanted to put that in there, and a few calendar journal cards for Heather. And then here's, the book 2, Gabrielle, date of her death, book page from the original book, fabric back here, last journal card for Heather, embossed paper from Heather of Rose Hill Paper Cottage. On the back is actually a little bit more of the mood board silk that you can pin anything to. So here's a little sewing pin here. Just be careful and not prick that. And then this is her favorite little fabric from when she was a kid. And then again, there's that journal card, the greeting card from this artist here representing the 1926 dress. So that's the end of the journal. It's still chunky, even though I already took out a few of the fabric floating pages, but it will stand on its own, even though it has the buttons and the rosary at the end here. And look good on the bookshelf. You can close that up actually, Heather, with a little bit of ribbon, and it should close tightly. Oh, and in the back, actually this is a floating lily, and I think for July, her birthday, lily is one of her birthday flowers, or month flowers. A little bit of lace in that. And there's that. So again, you'll get a box with all the journal cards in them, a little Chanel box. And all of the design inspiration research. I'll include that in your folio, and you can reuse this folio for any of your future projects. An article about Chanel designing again, leading up to her 1954 opening, and this came from the Vogue archives. I usually date them for you, so hopefully the date's on there somewhere. Rendering of a Chanel article from August 1954, Vogue, presenting different fabrics. Chanel and Her famous tweed, also from Vogue, February 1, 1964. There. It's about how America loves Chanel. And then Heather likes quotes, so I included some quotes from Vogue May 1972, which typed up a lot of her quotes and suggestions for dressing. Lined this with some gold paper, boucle on the outside, front and back. It was a vintage ledger book. I thought it was a perfect size for collecting your papers for your different journal projects. So that is that. And I will see you next time. Hopefully I can finish one more journal before I head back. We'll see you soon.